Welcome to Gut Check Radio. I'm Nick Belden, a chiropractic physician and functional medicine practitioner. The information provided in this podcast is for educational entertainment purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, cure, or treat any disease, and do not apply any of the information you hear without first speaking with your physician. I feel like in the cancer world, does it bring a lot of people closer to their faith, or to start to develop a faith practice?
That's a great question. I feel like it's one of those things that could go either way, right? I feel like someone could receive a cancer diagnosis, and if they were a person of faith, turn and kind of shake their hands at God and say, "Why me? I don't understand." Or again, it could bring them closer. And I think the two aspects of that is, the former, if someone's angry at their diagnosis and they're angry with God, those emotions are not healthy, right?
Yes.
And over time, like, that actually makes the cancer worse. And I think the latter, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with Chris work, but he's known as Chris Beat Cancer. He's a big advocate of complementary medicine. I had him on my podcast a few weeks ago. He overcame stage 3 colon cancer, but he's basically a patient advocate. And one thing he says is that cancer happened like for me, not to me. And it was a gift, right? And I think the people that are in the boat of viewing cancer as a gift are really the ones that end up beating the disease in the long run, because they just shift their mindset to one of gratitude and they say, okay, this diagnosis is actually a good thing. It can help change my life in so many different ways, right? I improve my nutrition. I forgive all the people that have hurt me in my life. I achieve better emotional health. So, when push comes to shove, I obviously haven't been in this position, but I think, at the time of the diagnosis, that decision of, trusting God or being mad at him really plays a big role in the outcome of your disease, for sure.
And for the listeners, stage 3 colon cancer, by the time it gets to stage 3 of the colon, not only is it aggressive, but you're likely looking at surgery to remove part of your bowels. So you just have so many things stacked against you to not make you believe in healing. So to say this happened for me is like such a revelation, considering the deck is sort of stacked against you almost at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was something you said earlier about, receiving the diagnosis of cancer. And I have to imagine for some people, being told you have cancer is probably just as stressful, if not more, and this might be a hyperbolic statement, than maybe the existing stress the cancer was causing.
Yep.
How do you feel
Absolutely.
about that?
I think that's spot on. And again, I think Chris also speaks a lot about this, but the fear that occurs when a doctor tells a patient they have cancer, again, like, it's kind of like self-fulfilling prophecy, right? In the sense of, like, a doctor says something, they quote unquote put like this like medical hex over the patient by saying, if you don't do this, you have this amount of time to live, or this is what's going to happen. And that's why I think it's really important for the patient to just stand on truth, right? And you have to reject whatever the oncologist is saying. That person's not God. And you have to just speak, affirmations and words of truth over yourself. Like, I am healthy, I am whole, like, I will be healed. But yeah, to your point, I think fear is the worst thing, right? Like, if you're fearful about something, your body reacts to those thoughts, right? So it creates stress within your body as well. Again, like, our body reacts to what our mind tells it. So again, easier said than done, right? But I think the best approach with any diagnosis is to really, take a step back, take a breath. Don't let fear control you, not only from an emotional perspective, but from a decision perspective, right? When you're in a state of fear, studies have shown, like, you're not able to think clearly, right? And you're therefore rushed into making decisions on things that may not benefit you, right? Or may not be beneficial for you in the long run, right? But your doctor is pushing it right now. So again, it's not easy, but I think, being aware of that emotional state when you're in the office and not letting it control you is really key.
And what is it that you think that, and maybe that's part of it, as in, why do you think so many people fear the word cancer? Like, I feel like even to say that in public conversation, someone says, oh, so-and-so is diagnosed with cancer, everyone's like, oh my goodness, where it could be as simple as just a melanoma that gets removed, or it's like stage 4 pancreatic cancer that the person's probably not going to live more than 6 months. Like, why do you think that word in and of itself just induces so much fear in people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, in short, I think it's because there's no quote unquote cure for it,
Mm,
right? I mean, people can say you can cure like stage 1, stage 2 cancers by removing it from the body, but not necessarily recognizing that cancer daughter cells still remain in the body post surgery, post any type of treatment. And it's your immune system that really does the job of cleaning up those cancer cells, which is why it's so important to make sure you have a healthy immune system. But I mean, I also think because, again, the nature of our healthcare system, it's so corrupt. And I think to your point about fear, right? Like a cancer diagnosis is probably like one of the most fearful things someone could get, just because, again, there's no cure. There's not a lot of, how do I say it? There's not a lot of situations, Nick, where people like 100% recover from it that are actually shared with the public.
mm,
Right. So like let me rephrase that. There are so many cases of people with stage 4 cancers that are able to put it completely into remission. There's an incredible book by Kelly Turner. It's called Radical Remission. And she basically was this PhD student who traveled the world, and she just observed stage 4 cancer patients who were able to completely put their cancer into remission. And she wrote this book about these are the 7 or 9 common themes across the board that these people use to heal. And you don't really hear that, right? In the conventional healthcare space, you don't hear oncologists saying, oh, you can heal from a stage 4 cancer, because A, they're not aware of it, B, they are and don't want to share that, or C, they're not quote unquote allowed to share that because they're
mm.
binded by quote unquote the gold standard when it comes to treating cancer. So there's so many factors at play, but again, I think education and knowledge is power. So again, if a patient's diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, do your research and find out other stage 4 cancer patients who have healed, right? Then you won't have that fear. You'll have a sense of empowerment knowing that you can do it. And Chris Work's podcast is basically just, he interviews tons and tons of cancer patients from stage 1 to stage 4 that have healed themselves through natural modalities. And it's incredible and it's very empowering.
That belief effect. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is separate from the placebo, and maybe we don't need to dive into that. But you said there were 7 to 9 things that this in the book Radical Commissions, that we said it was called?
Radical remission.
Radical Remission. You said 7 to 9 things that this woman found. Are there any of those that are sort of unconventional, that things that, because I'm sure like nutrition, sleep, exercise were a few of those, but were there any that you're like, oh, I didn't expect that to be something in there?
Interestingly, what I touched on before, forgiveness and emotional health was huge. So there were cases where people just forgave someone in their life that caused them a lot of pain, and cancer just went into remission, which is absolutely like incredible. So that concept of releasing suppressed emotions, and interestingly, in Chinese medicine too, they correlate organs with different emotions. So someone who's very angry, for example, I'm sure you know this, like that sits in the liver, right? So if someone has a liver problem, they say like the underlying root of that is anger. And I think that area is so, so fascinating. But yeah, I mean, releasing suppressed emotions was one of them. Radically changing your diet was another one. That sense of empowerment, taking control of your health, increasing positive emotions, embracing social support. Again, those are all things that you don't get in a conventional oncologist office, right? And they're not hard things to do either. And that's the irony. They're relatively simple changes to make in your life that have such massive impact.